I'm from Ireland. I've been asked to chair today's important session of today's conference, and because we've started a little bit late, we might have to steam along a little bit faster than we would have done originally. So today's session now is entitled "The Militarisation of the European Union." And we have two speakers. Firstly, we have Roger Cole, who is the chairperson of the Peace and Neutrality Alliance in Ireland. And our second speaker today is longtime peace activist Tobias Fluger. And Tobias is the vice president of Die Linke in Germany, former MEP, and he's also with the Information Center on Militarisation in Germany. And roughly, I would ask the speakers for the first 10 minutes for their presentations each, 10 minutes each for their presentations, and then we'll open it to the floor to people for maybe 20-25 minutes. We're going to have longer, but because we're running out of time a little bit, we might have to catch up there. And the speakers will then have time to respond to your questions at the end of the open session here. And I'll just ask the speakers, would you like to respond to the questions all together at the end, or perhaps as they come along? So 3 at a time or something? Okay, thank you very much. Firstly, Roger Cole, I'll ask you to open the meeting.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Now, most of you virtually know nothing about PANA, so let me explain what it is. The Peace and Neutrality Alliance was established in 1996. Our objective was to advocate that the Irish people had a right to our own independent foreign policy, that positive neutrality should be an integral part of that policy, and it should be pursued primarily through the reformed United Nations. Now, we do have individual membership, but it's primarily an organisation that brings together other organisations. There's about 34, I won't mention them all, but there are trade union unions affiliated like Unite and the Dublin Council of Trade Unions. You've got peace groups like RHC&D and Pax Christi. You've got solidarity groups like the Latin American Solidarity Campaign and the Cuban Support Group. And you've got political parties like the Workers' Party and Sinn Féin. And for those of you who might be interested, after the last local elections and European elections, Sinn Féin is now the largest political party in Ireland. So I'm quite pleased about that, despite the fact I'm a member of the Labour Party. But I mean, the reality is that the parties that, if you like, continue on the tradition of opposition to imperialism are the parties that I strongly identify with and that PANA supports. Because as you know, 100 years ago, we were all part, including my country, of the British Union. In fact, a number of people formed a private army to go to war with, this is the UVF, to go to war with the British Parliament to stop Ireland having the same kind of powers that the Welsh have. That gives you some idea, and that doesn't amount to a hill of beans. So it gives you an indication of the background that 100 years ago caused the 1916 Rising and the National War of Independence. And as a consequence of that National War of Independence against the British Union, against the British Empire, we have our own independent constitution, adopted in the 1930s. And Article 6 of that constitution says, all power of the government, legislative, executive, judicially, derive under God from the people, whose right it is to designate the rulers of the state, and in final appeal to decide all questions of national policy in accordance with the requirements of a common good. So unlike your country, where theoretically power derives from the Windsor family, power in our country derives from the people and goes upwards. That is why every time our party, our state parties, advocate the transfer of power away from us, the Irish people, and give them over to the European Union and its institutions, they have to have a referendum to ask us. That makes us legally, constitutionally unique in Europe. Because as far as I know from other European states, they don't necessarily have a legal obligation to do that. Because either the king or the queen or the state parliament sees itself as the supreme power. We have a constitution that says Irish people are. As a consequence, we've had referendum after referendum on the European Union and the relationship of our state with the European Union. And when we vote no, because Pána played a key role in winning, first of all, the Nice referendum, and then again the Lisbon referendum, they simply force us to vote again until we voted the right way. They also spent millions. And I don't mean, you know, I do, when I say millions, I mean millions. I mean Ryanair, you've all heard of Ryanair. That guy said, I am opposed to Irish neutrality and I am going to give €1 million to the Yes campaign. Intel said exactly the same thing. So you aren't talking, this essentially in Ireland was a class war of the rich against the people using their money to force us to be in favour of the transformation of the European Union into what we regard as a centralised, militarised, neoliberal superstate. Not that different to the state that we fought a war of independence against. And I think we're unique. I think there's a lot of people in your own country that are pissed off with power being transferred from them to the European superstate.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that it's people who think of themselves as being on the left should have to accept that that is a reality. And you can't divide yourself from the kind of instinctive opposition to the feeling that power is being transferred. Now, I want to talk primarily about the issues of the last treaty, because every time there's a treaty, there's more power given over. The Lisbon Treaty said that the EU was given a distinct legal identity, separate from and superior to the individual member states. We have a kind of same relation of Rhode Island, the United States of America. That it creates a new post, a European foreign minister, with their own actual department, sizable and growing common foreign, and in charge of common foreign policy and security policy, with their own actual department. It legalised the European battle groups and the European Defence Agency. It created what's called a military structured cooperation, and I quote, whose military capabilities fully higher criteria which have made more binding commitments to one another in this area with a view to demanding missions to do so. Once established, these military forces shall, quote, in accordance with the principle of a single set of forces. I quote, in accordance with the principle of a single set of forces. That's the definition of an army. So what the European Union is doing is saying we are setting up an army, a European army. And once this army has been set up, the countries that participate, say the bigger ones, say Germany and France, if they're then given by all the other European Union states the right to go and restore democracy in Libya or whatever, they can do it, and once they've got permission, then they're in control themselves. They don't have to report back to the European Parliament or European anybody. That the function of these tasks they're given are called the Petersburg tasks. And they are, quote, joint disarmament operations, military advice and assistance tasks, and post-conflict stability. All these tasks may contribute to the fight against terrorism, including supporting third countries in combating terrorism in their territories. So they have given themselves legal responsibility to help other states fight terrorism. So there was a discussion earlier about drones being legal. Of course they're legal. The European Union Treaty has said that they can do all this sort of stuff. Now, it said that the European Union common security and defence policy is to be compatible with NATO's. And a quote, this is actually in the Lisbon Treaty, a more assertive union role in security and defence matters will contribute to the vitality of a renewed Atlantic alliance in accordance with the Berlin Plus agreements. So when the Irish people and the British people and the French people and the what these other alleged neutral countries like Sweden or Austria, when they asked their people, they didn't. When they passed the Lisbon Treaty, they were asking their own people to facilitate and revitalise a nuclear-armed military alliance, and that's in the treaty. I bet you didn't know that. Who did, by the way? Well, 2, 3. Like, I mean, the awareness of what all these European Union treaties is at a very low ebb, even among political activists. One of the key things they've done is they've set up these European Union battle groups. They're supposed to be 1,500 strong, able to go anywhere in the world in a 5-day notice, once given permission by the European Union ministers. The last one, and we were together with our comrades in Germany in the German-led battle group, was actually 3,000 strong. So they were able to send 3,000 troops, so anywhere in the world, in a 5-day notice. Now, don't forget, for every one of those 3,000, you have to have 8 backups. In other words, like people get ill, they have to be transferred. There's all sorts of processes. So that's a sizable army. And there's 2 of them operational at any one time. So you're talking about a 60,000 strong army. So it's not big, it's not like huge, but it's not small either. And it also has the effect of making all the different military commanders in all the EU states get to know each other. It's creating a European military caste. This takes time because none of these battle groups have actually been put into effect anywhere. But that's what's happening. Also, as most of you know, at the Lisbon NATO conference, NATO described the European Union as a military strategic partner. So the idea that you have a good European Union on one side and a bad NATO over there, right? Now, you know, like these comic book theories, you know, bad, good, that's utter rubbish. The European Union is an integral part of the NATO structure in any meaningful sense of the term. So, I'm only moving. 2 minutes to go. You can't say a lot in 10 minutes. I suppose the point I'm trying to make here is that because of our experience in having referendums and actually winning 2 of them, and as you all know, it's much better fun winning than losing. But even we can compete with millions and millions of euro on one side and a couple of thousand on the other. But I'm quite optimistic because we are coming up in our country to the anniversary of the 1916 Rising. This was a major historic event in our country where people rose up in rebellion against the British Union, the British Empire. And we fought a national war of independence against that empire. Now that was a particular generation of people that mightn't happen again. But you are talking about things happening in Ireland because of that relatively unique anti-imperialist culture that's actually quite deeply rooted in our own constitution and in the current political situation. That we would like to think that we have something to offer, if you like, both the American and in particular the European peace movement, of a knowledge about what is happening in the process of the militarization of Europe that might be of benefit to you. So again, thank you for the invitation.
Roger Cole from the Peace and Neutrality Alliance in Ireland. And our next speaker is Tobias Fluger. Okay, Tobias.
Hello together. The interesting thing here is that I totally agree with Roger, but we fight also together against this Lisbon Treaty, because I think this Lisbon Treaty is a core point of the development of militarization of European Union. So I absolutely underline what Roger spoke about. We have some new developments in the last days. There was a council meeting from the governments of European Union, and they decided who will be the next responsible person for these military things inside the European Union. It's a very nice Italian woman, the former foreign minister. Her name is Miss Mogherini. So we have to learn that it's no more Miss Ashton, it's now Miss Mogherini, who will bring us the terrible things about the militarization of European Union. And what I think is very important is that we have something like, first, an informal meeting of the foreign minister of European Union. Then we have the council, the summit of European Union, and then we have the summit of NATO. And it's something like a sign that it is in this very close, that it is so close together. And it's also important what they will decide inside NATO. And as Roger mentioned before, in the Lisbon Treaty it's very clear that there should be a very close cooperation between European Union and NATO. And also they decide that they want to increase the military spending inside European Union as they do it inside NATO. They spoke about that in the moment it's not enough what they spend for military inside NATO. They want to increase it. I will quote one paper of the so-called European Defense Agency. It's one of the institutions that was created through the Lisbon Treaty. And my impression, as I was a member of the European Parliament, was that this European Defense Agency is something like a European armament agency, because they try to coordinate the different armament projects inside this European Defense Agency. And they make a very interesting analysis. I quote, European defense spending has exhibited two key trends in the past decade. The first is that total defense spending in Europe declines from 263 billion euros in 2001 to 220 billion euros in 2011. This trend cuts across all defense spending categories. And the second trend is that the aggregate spending on a per soldier basis rose significantly from 76,000 euros in 2001 to 800 euros in 2011. And that's very interesting, that they spend more per soldier than before. So, because always the government argument that they spend not so much money than in the last days, it's very interesting that they concentrate the troops inside European Union and also inside NATO, and to bring it more to fighting troops. This is what they want to have inside NATO, and what they also have what they want to have inside European Union, to concentrate to the fighting troops like the EU battle groups. And we also always have the debate inside the different member states. It should be, they would not spend so much inside the military industry. that's totally wrong, because in the same time, now they have decided in a council meeting in December 2013 that they want to increase the military-industrial complex inside European Union. And very important in this is that you have to know that in the moment there are only 6 member states inside European Union who really have a big so-called defense industry. And they want to have a cooperation, and they call it pooling and sharing. So that some do this and others do this. And in this case, one of the advisors of the former responsible person for this military things inside European Union says that it is necessary to have so much inside European Union that now United States has. What would be terrible, because it would be something like the third one part to have three more than it is now. But it shows that they concentrate to bring a military industrial complex inside European Union, in which you can call it oligopolization. It's not monopolization, it's oligopolization, because it's more different big armament concerns and so on. And I think it's very important to know that they want to increase this and to concentrate it in different companies inside European Union. Another very important point is what they do now in the moment. Inside European Union, they have decided to have more sanctions against Russia. And they will decide inside the NATO, and during the NATO summit the next days, that they will have new bases especially in the Eastern European states. Yesterday there was the news that they will have 6 new bases, perhaps in Lithuania, or we will see in which states. But what is very interesting, that in the first time after the end of the Cold War, they decided to have troops inside, NATO troops and NATO bases inside these Eastern European countries. And it is also linked to European Union, because they are all members of European Union. And what was very interesting, that we now have a debate inside Sweden and Finland, that both will be, the governments are, how can I say, the governments discuss that they will be members of NATO. And so the link between European Union and NATO will be more closer than before, because in the moment you have 4 so-called neutral states. It's Sweden, Finland, Austria, and Ireland. So, and when they would have Sweden and Finland inside NATO, it would be more closer than before. But nevertheless, NATO always have the so-called program Partnership for Peace. And this program means that all these not NATO member states are included in the maneuvers and so on, also in the military actions. And also, very important point what they will decide is how they handle with Georgia and Ukraine. Because some time ago they said that they will be members of NATO. And when you see what the European Union has done with Ukraine, it's very close to that what NATO has done with Ukraine. There was this so-called association agreement between European Union and Ukraine, and a lot don't know this have 3 parts. The first one is the political, the second one is the economic, and the third one is the military cooperation. There's a military cooperation between EU association agreement, and a lot don't speak about this, because it's but what it means is that Ukraine will participate in the military action of European Union and also in the military action of NATO. And there will be a special partnership from Ukraine to NATO, NATO membership, but it will be a special partnership. And so you also have this parallel developments between European Union on the one side and NATO on the other side. And my impression in the moment is that this NATO summit will be one of that we will speak in the next years a lot, because they will decide an increasing of the military spending. They will have a closer cooperation with European Union, and they also will have more troops inside Eastern Europe. And they are, when you hear what Rasmussen in the moment is speaking, he's something like an ill war thinker, I something, because he always it's something like Putin is responsible. Putin is responsible. It's unbelievable. Nevertheless, not all is good what Russia does, but this what NATO are speaking is always to say Russia is responsible for all of this what is in the moment in conflict there, and it is absolutely clear when they send troops direct to the border of Russia, it's a clear escalation, and it's clear that for me we are very near to a real war in the moment when they will do this all the next time what they are doing now. So the cooperation between NATO and European Union is one of the core moments of this what inside this NATO summit is discussed, and what also is a very substantial point for NATO policy. And my impression in the moment is that they will bring this military industrial complex more to some companies, and then they have a stronger so-called defense industry to have more military spending, also in the member states of European Union. And when you read the different papers, strategy papers inside European Union, it's very interesting. They are speaking absolutely clear. I have some quotes here that it is in the interest of European Union to have also military troops, and it is in the interest of European Union to have with this military troops to go all over the world. It's no more as before. They said 50,000 kilometers now. It's no more end limits, and so I think these are some important points we have to focus on. And what I think we should do as a peace movement is always to say NATO is something like a war organization, and European Union also is an imperial power which very close cooperates with NATO. And as Roger mentioned before, especially when I look to the debate, in the political debate in Germany, the good European Union, this is so peaceful. No, there's nothing peaceful what they have done with Ukraine. It was a clear escalation. This association agreement and all this what they have done, they support this government, Poroshenko, who also kills the state of European Union is attacked, all have to react. So you can create, as we is I think a lot of people Europe still is it's very there. So the thing is that because of the people, it's it's very clear. It's more and more Africa, and it's a Asia. So this is clear that he as imperial power and thank you.
he has been on militarisation in Germany and long-time peace activist. Thanks, Tobias.